I'd like to first address the metaphor where I said it was illegal downloading illegal music even though it's there. However, because these test banks are from the actual sites that are connected with the books, it's the same as if an artist gives permission for anyone who visits their site to give free downloads. And there are tons of artists who do that just to get people to have a taste of their music so they can take along. And that is actually ethical because they choose to give out that information. Also, we'd like to stress how Chris said the importance of, or actually how we all said, the importance of tests. Now, you're putting so much pressure on the student to learn for the test. And that combined with the availability of the test banks, how it's just out there and you have no, and you don't have to go through any steps or procedures, you're not hacking anything, you're just using the internet like you would every day, or for most of us. It's because of that that we would say that this is no different really from depriving a dog or a pet from eating and then leaving food out there and then expecting them not to eat, expecting them not to use all the resources available. That being said, we know that the use of test banks can be unethical, but it's not the student's use of the test banks. It's the way that test banks are handled when they're communicating to the student. So we would say that it's unethical on the fault of the publishers by making it available, so readily available to students. And maybe perhaps on the part of the academic institution and the teachers for not making their academic expectations clear enough to say, oh, in my classroom, this is cheating.
And the way the test banks is used is also, obviously, if you get a test bank and you memorize A, B, that's not using the test bank as a resource. This is our argument. The test bank is a resource to use. When you get out into the real world and you Google if you have a problem, you're not gonna, the first site that comes up for our particular case, if you type in a test book, is a test bank. When you get out into the real world, you're not going to just completely ignore that first hit that comes up. You're going to use all the resources available to help you study, to help you get informed, to make this decision, to help you in the real world.
Okay, we'll give you a minute to, you have 3 minutes.
Okay, going back to what Marshall said about how the artists, how on their the websites, it has the music available because they want to get their name out and have people listen to their music. That's the music is provided. It's not like going to the music websites or the music things and downloading the music where it's illegal because it says you're illegally downloading the music. It's because it's provided. The test banks, they're not originally provided because if you go to the companion websites and look up the test banks, you have to have a password, which the passwords are usually given to the professors in the book. It's not provided to the students. It's not saying, oh, if you're a student, you can have this test bank because they're providing it for you. It's provided for the professors so that way they can use the test banks and not having to make up their own tests, which creates more time for them to be available to their students during test time.
And also, besides test banks, there's plenty of other study material that's just as good, if not better, to study for tests. When you go to those companion websites, they have study guides, different practice quizzes you can take, and that's not directly a test bank where the professor would derive their questions. And so I would think that working those example problems and doing those examples is better than using the test bank. And so without that, you wouldn't be using much because you can still utilize other resources.
And they mentioned that some teachers allow you to use their books and notes, and so it's not cheating for them. Well, and that's fine if the instructor specifically says you can use those, obviously. But when you know an instructor, and particularly if you know the instructor uses the test bank for the test, and you don't get specific permission, and you bypass the normal avenues to get the test bank, then it's definitely cheating. And then one of the things they said about using the internet, just like you do every day, if it comes up, you get to use it. Well, just because it's available on the internet, one, doesn't mean it's necessarily correct, and doesn't necessarily mean it's ethical to use the information.
Okay, at this point, we'll open it up to questions from the audience. Are there any questions for either team? You can ask questions, Dr. Spencer. Okay, Lenore.
Okay, first I have a comment. This is to Team B, I guess. A comment and then a question. About the downloading of test banks, as far as to my knowledge, I actually think that it's now available to students where you can pay and actually get the access to that. So it's really not illegal. But that's just going on hearsay. I actually have never done it myself. But, and then,
What's your password?
My question is, okay, you talked about the companion websites, and I actually have had a couple of classes where we do have access to resources like that. And sometimes those multiple choice questions are actually the questions that are generated in the test. And these are for professors that we know use test banks. So that how is that any different from having access to the test question, the test bank, and going through that as you are going through the companion website, and actually using that as a study thing? And on top of that, you talked about responsibility as one of the factors under virtue ethics. Why are you only putting the responsibility on the students to do right? If the professor knows that he uses a test bank and he knows that the students know this because he pulls the test back, like when he has our grade back, but then he pulls them back, that's an automatic indication to students that he's using a test bank. And so if he knows that, why doesn't he mix up the questions and then you're actually really testing the students and they're not just memorizing? That's somebody who's actually gone through the test bank for the right reasons, knows the material, and no matter how it comes up, can actually do the work. Sorry, I asked that.
Was there a question?
The difference, the companion, like multiple choice and the test bank.
I think the difference is like you said, to get the test bank, most of them, you do have to pay for. So obviously it's like making it harder so you're not supposed to use it. If they wanted you to use it, then the test bank would be on there printed out,
It's like buying a textbook, we have to pay for it, it's
Well,
not free.
yeah.
But who's it really coming from?
Yeah, and so.
The publishers of the book.
And so it's just more ethical to use the multiple choice questions, which if they're the same, then why wouldn't you do the more ethical thing if they're the same?
Okay, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to disrupt you.
And
Go ahead.
then, so I just think that it doesn't really matter, even if you do have to pay or somebody had to pay somehow to get that test bank, it's still, that makes that unethical to use, especially if you know that the professor derives it exactly from that. So if you have access to the multiple choice questions, which are given to you on purpose, and you say that they're exactly the same, then why wouldn't you use this rather than trying to go the underground way and use that?
It's kind of like saying stealing is unethical, but buying stolen goods is okay.
So.
Okay, questions?
Can we rebut?
Okay, let's follow questions. Yes.
I have another question for y'all, I'm sorry. I've had math classes here at TLU where the teacher takes questions for the test directly out of our homework guides. Just the homework questions, they list 20 of them and you just take random questions. Would you say it's unethical for students to go through and work every problem out of every chapter, even though that's kind of what you're doing when you get a test bank?
You have full access to those exercises, and those are for you to use for that purpose. I also had a teacher that he gave us all the essay questions up front, and we went through them throughout the class, and then we knew a certain number of those tests, those questions were going to be on the test. We didn't know specifically which ones or how many, we knew how many, and it was just a small portion. So that was his technique, and that's fine. But that material was specifically available to us.
It's
We didn't have to.
authorized for
Yeah,
it.
it's
Right.
saying that they're providing, saying you already have this, I'm gonna get the questions from that. Other than the test banks, it's not available ready to you. You have to go somewhere else to get it. So the difference is that the study guide questions are given to you up front, whereas a test bank, it's not given to you. And it's just their decision to go from the study guide, not a test bank.
Okay, we'll let the other team, y'all wanted to.
Can we discuss this first? No, well, I was just gonna say that, your argument earlier was that knowing what was gonna be on the test prior, exactly, is considered cheating. So when professors provide test banks for us, say for econ or finance, so would you consider, should we just not use those resources then? Because they're gonna be direct questions that are gonna be on the test.
No, it's that they're providing it for you.
Right, but your argument was that it would be cheating, though, if we knew what was on the test prior to you.
It's cheating to get the access that's not available to you. Because if you go behind their backs to get it, then that's cheating. Whereas if they give it to you, saying here, you can study off of this, that's not cheating because they're telling you can do it. Whereas the other way, they're not saying, oh, I want you to study off this test bank that I'm not giving to you.
Okay, let's let any questions? Let's move it back to you guys.
I want to ask Team A a question. Let's suppose that the professor has said that I don't care whether you use test banks or not. you go out there and search and you check out, you know, ratings on test banks and you find the best one and it's on sale for $250 and you talk to mom and dad and they say, fine, buy it if it'll help you pass this class. You know that nobody else in the class is going to spend that amount of money for the test. Do you have an obligation to share that with everyone else to preserve the fairness of the test?
Okay, we'll give you a minute to discuss that. Okay, go ahead.
We think that within this, there's a whole nother full ethical dilemma that you would have to go through depending on what kind of ethical lens you look at things through. For instance, if you're respecting your own autonomy to make the right choice, whether or not you give it to other people, then that would be under virtue ethics. However, you would say that you do have a responsibility as a student to be a good friend or a good peer to your students, to say that. So to answer your question, we would say it would be the more ethical decision to go ahead and reveal this and copy it for other people. However, we do not feel it is
Fair.
we would not feel obligated to.
Okay, I want to go to Team B and I want to use the same scenario. Now, you didn't share it with the rest of the class. You turned out to be the only one in the class who gets an A on the test. Everybody else has a C+ or below. The professor refused to curve it. Do you report the person? And if so, what do you think the penalty ought to be for having done this to the rest of the class?
Okay, y'all get a minute to talk about that.
So we purchased it?
No,
Somebody else
you're
did?
one of the people who didn't get an A on the test, and you're not going to get a curve. And you don't, now you know somebody else used it, but you didn't have access to it. You report it, and what do you recommend the professor the penalty should be?
Response?
Okay, we decided that it would be, assuming that the test bank that they used was available for anybody to purchase, we think that it's ethical for that person to purchase it and use it, assuming that anybody could have gone out and gotten it. We don't think that the dollar amount really plays a big importance because that's never going to be fair. Like, I might have money to buy lunch today and you may not, but that doesn't mean I shouldn't eat lunch because you can't. And so, I mean, do you know what I mean? Like, it's the same difference. And
So you
so,
would
like,
just take your C and sort of suck it up, right?
yeah, like, just because you have, you have that privilege and I don't, but it was available for all of us, I don't think makes it.
Yeah, especially since the professor said, I don't care if you go use them, like, you can use any kind of resource you want to. It's just that that student decided to dish out the money to go buy it, whereas the other students decided not to opt for that.
Okay. And vote again. Student use of test banks is ethical. You agree, disagree, or undecided? Somebody either, oh, okay, there we go.
There we go. We got 23.
All right. So, prior to the debate, 65% said it is ethical, 22% said no, 13%. You changed no opinions in the room.
But we know for sure that there might be people who switch sides.
Well, that's true. We don't know if people switch sides, but that's the first time it's stayed the same.
Let's have a roll call. Yeah.
No, that is a first. We've never had it stay the same in the pre and post discussions. So let's give them a round of applause.